Okay, let's dive right in. You know the classic brain teaser? The Monty Hall problem.
Oh, yeah, definitely. 3 doors.
Exactly. One car, two goats. You make your first pick, say door number one.
Right.
Then Monty Hall, the host, who knows exactly where that car is, he opens one of the other doors.
And it's always a goat.
Always a goat. And here's the kicker. He asks if you want to switch from your original door number one to the other remaining closed door.
And the standard advice, the thing everyone
You
says.
switch. Always switch. The math apparently shows you double your chances, right? From 1 and 3 to 2 and 3.
That's the line. Seems like a total no-brainer on the surface.
It really does. And look, that statistical argument, it's pretty compelling.
Absolutely. You start out, each door's got a 13 shot.
Makes sense?
Monty takes away a wrong answer from the doors you didn't pick. So intuitively, you feel like, okay, that probability must shift to the other unopened door.
And the standard math backs that up, no question.
For sure.
But what if we've kind of been looking at this the wrong way? What if those probability calculations, well, mathematically solid on paper, what if they miss something really crucial about the situation itself, like the context?
Okay, interesting. Go on.
So today, we're looking at a really fascinating perspective from a source that suggests, well, that the Monty Hall problem isn't really about pure probability.
Not about the numbers.
Not just about the numbers. It argues it's much more about game show psychology, performance, maybe even a bit of like narrative misdirection.
Okay, I see. So moving beyond just P equals whatever.
Exactly. This source we dove into, it directly challenges that core idea that switching automatically helps you in that final moment.
Right, the moment you actually make the switch or stick choice.
Yeah. It suggests that the statistical advantage we always hear about, it might be more of an artifact of the whole setup over many, many trials.
Like a long-run average kind of thing?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than reflecting the actual odds you're facing right there at the end, with 2 doors left.
Okay, that's a really different way to frame it. So the source is saying, basically, forget the formulas for a second. This is theater.
Pretty much. And here's where it gets really interesting. The argument is that Monty revealing that goat, it's not just passive information.
It's an action that changes the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It fundamentally reshapes the whole scenario. It's not just updating your initial probabilities. It's like starting a new final round, a head-to-head choice.
So that initial 1 in 3 chance you had, how does this view see that? Is it just ignored?
Not ignored exactly, but the source argues it loses its direct relevance once Monty makes his move.
Yeah.
It uses this image like the rugs have been pulled out.
Okay.
Those initial odds existed, sure. But the game you are playing now, after the reveal, operates differently, almost like a new set of rules applied.
Right, because Monty's action isn't random. That's key here, isn't it?
It's crucial.
Yeah.
The game show is set up to make you think those original odds are still the main factor. That switching lets you tap into that initial 23 chance you picked wrong.
Yeah, that's a story we're usually told.
But this source emphasizes Monty's reveal is guaranteed. He has to show you a goat behind a door you didn't pick.
He's never going to open the door with the car.
Never. And he's never going to open your door.
So think about it. If you pick the car first...
He opens the other door with a goat.
Right. And if you picked a goat first...
He opens the other door with a goat.
So either way, no matter what you first picked...
You end up in the same spot. Standing there, looking at 2 closed doors, your original pick and the other one. One has the car, one has a goat.
Which leads to the source's big question. In that specific moment, with just those 2 doors, why isn't it just a simple 50-50 guess?
And that is the absolute core of this counterargument. The standard view sees Monty's move as helpful data.
Refining your knowledge.
Right. But this source, it calls it, well, almost a sleight of hand, a distraction.
Like a magician making you look over here.
While the real move, the psychological push, happens over there, unnoticed.
Interesting. So it's quite critical of just looking at the probability chain.
Yeah. Very. It suggests that treating the whole thing as one continuous probability calculation is maybe too simplistic.
Because the game happens in stages.
Exactly. Stage 1, your initial pick, based on 13. Stage 2, Monty's guaranteed performative reveal. Stage 3, your final choice between the 2 remaining doors.
And the source argues that the influence of stage 1 kind of gets overridden.
Or at least its direct impact on the final choice is nullified by Monty's guaranteed action. The source describes the setup before the final choice as manipulated theater.
Strong words.
Yeah. Monty isn't just randomly giving you info, he's building a narrative. He's creating the feeling that switching is the smart statistical play.
Even if, when you stare at those last two doors, it's just a guess.
That's the argument. A guess between two effectively unknown options at that specific point in time.
Now, what about the fact that, statistically, switching does win more often if you play many times? The source acknowledges that, right?
Oh, absolutely. It concedes that if you ran this game 1,000 times and always switched, yeah, you'd win the car about 2/3 of the time.
So how does it reconcile that with the 50-50 final choice idea?
It calls that long-run result a statistical artifact,
Meaning,
meaning it's a pattern that emerges over many repetitions because of the initial setup and the forced reveal. But it doesn't dictate the odds of any single instance once the game structure has been altered by Monty's reveal.
okay, I think I get it. It's like flipping a coin.
Go on.
We know long run, it's 50% heads, 50% tails. But that knowledge doesn't change the fact that the next flip is still 50-50. The past results don't influence the single event.
That's a great analogy. This source is essentially saying the final choice in Monty Hall is like that single coin flip, a binary choice that's been dressed up to look like part of a more complex probability puzzle.
And the source really leans into the game show aspect, calling it a proto-reality TV mind game.
Yeah, it emphasizes the tension, the feeling of trying to outsmart the system, play the odds.
But suggesting that, in the end, the final decision is made with incomplete info between just two doors.
It even tackles the 100-door version, where you pick one, Monty opens 98 goat doors, and asks if you want to switch to the one other closed door.
Where switching seems overwhelmingly obvious based on standard probability.
Right. But the source argues, even then, while the illusion is stronger, the fundamental dynamic is the same. After the guaranteed reveal of 98 goats.
You're still just choosing between two doors, your original and the other one.
Exactly. One has the car, one doesn't. The argument remains that the choice itself, in that moment, is 50-50.
So the core argument, boiling it down, the perceived benefit of switching at the moment of choice isn't real probability advantage.
Not according to this source. It's presented as a carefully built illusion. A confidence trick wrapped in probability theory is how the source puts it.
Wow. Okay, so switching doesn't actually improve your odds right then and there.
It just feels like it does because the whole game skillfully built this story around the power of the switch, based on those initial conditions that are no longer fully relevant.
Okay, so let's try to sum this up. This perspective, it's definitely contrarian.
For sure. It argues that while, yes, over the long haul, switching wins more often, that final decision between the two doors left, it's functionally just a 50-50 guess.
And the reason we feel switching is better is down to the showmanship, the psychology.
Exactly. The psychological manipulation the narrative Monty creates by revealing that goat in a guaranteed way.
And this viewpoint really criticizes the standard statistical take for maybe missing the forest for the trees, for overlooking the performance aspect.
Yeah, it argues the statisticians focus purely on the numbers, but Monty's action isn't just a number input. It changes the game fundamentally.
Making that initial 13 probability less important for the final binary choice you face.
Right. The trick, as this source frames it, is making you believe those initial probabilities still dictate that final choice.
Even though the game structure has shifted after the guaranteed GOAT reveal.
So you think you're making a statistically savvy move, but maybe, just maybe, you're making a fresh guess between two possibilities.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And that brings up a kind of final thought to leave people with.
Yeah.
Well, think about how many situations in life, outside of game shows, they might look like logical puzzles, things you can calculate probabilities for. But maybe they're influenced much more by how they're presented, by the narrative, the framing, all those subtle psychological nudges.
Like the game show elements hidden in plain sight in everyday decisions.
Exactly. And maybe understanding those dynamics, seeing the potential performance behind the apparent logic, could that actually change how you approach making choices yourself?
That's a really provocative question. Definitely something to mull over.